Tyler was the kind of white kid who never heard no. Senior year, captain vibes, all the swagger and none of the consequences. At an all-white suburban high school, he walked like he owned the place. And Jamal, a quiet, chubby ninth grader with deep brown skin and tired eyes, became his favorite target. Every day, Tyler picked him out, spit on his sneakers, dumped milk on his head, dragged him into the bathroom for group beatdowns. No teachers stepped in. No student spoke up. And Jamal? He said nothing, just swallowed the pain. Until the day he came home with blood on his lip and his shirt torn open. His father, Darius Johnson, didn't ask questions. He just nodded. They used to call Darius D-Train back in South Central, a name that once froze rooms. He walked away from that life to drive trucks and raise his son in peace. But some lines, you don't cross. The next morning, a black Cadillac Escalade rolled up to the school gates. Darius stepped out, white shirt, jacket loose, eyes cold. And when Tyler stepped out of class, he knew. This time he picked the wrong kid. Backhand index pointing right. What would you do if this happened to your son? Thumbs up, like, and subscribe if you believe respect isn't given, it's demanded. Speech balloon comment where you're watching from. And tell us, what would you say if you were Jamal's father? Jamal Johnson was invisible by design. At 14, he had already learned the safest way to survive in a world that didn't expect much from boys who looked like him. Keep your head down, speak when spoken to, and stay out of the way. He wasn't loud, wasn't fast, wasn't particularly social. He had a soft belly, round cheeks, and wore the same zip-up hoodie nearly every day. His favorite class was science, not because he loved atoms or lab work, but because the teacher actually called him by his name. Not you, not kid, Jamal. That meant something. His high school sat in the middle of a quiet suburb, 98% white. Big lawns, bigger trucks. People didn't yell here. They whispered their judgments behind drawn curtains and neighborhood Facebook groups. For a black kid like Jamal, walking these halls felt like trespassing through someone else's comfort zone. Most days, Jamal walked to school alone. No one walked with him, and that was fine. Loneliness hurt less than humiliation. His daily routine was painfully predictable. First period, Tyler would bump into him on purpose, pretending it was an accident. Second period, someone from Tyler's crew would knock Jamal's books out of his hand in the hallway. Lunch? A tray of food flying toward Jamal's shirt. Gym class? That was the worst. Getting picked last wasn't even the problem. It was the laughter, the whispering, the occasional, "Why don't you just quit, bro?" Jamal never cried in public. His face would harden, eyes glazed, and he'd push the feelings way down, like trash in a bin that never got emptied. But every night, in the quiet of his room, he'd press his face into his pillow and scream until there was nothing left. Sometimes, when it got really bad, he'd turn on the old radio his dad gave him. No Bluetooth, no screen, just static and soul, and sit on the edge of his bed listening to Marvin Gaye, not even understanding every lyric, but feeling like someone out there had been through something. Someone out there knew. Tyler Maddox had it all. Quarterback, blue eyes, lived in a gated cul-de-sac with a 4-car garage and a father on the school board. People didn't say no to Tyler. They laughed at his jokes, even when they weren't funny. Teachers gave him second chances, then third ones. Tyler wasn't cruel because he had to be. He was cruel because he knew he could be. To him, Jamal wasn't a person. He was a prop, the background character in Tyler's story. Someone to mock, to dominate, to control. And his group, 4 boys who orbited him like cheap satellites, followed every move. They barked when he barked. They hit when he said hit. And no one ever asked why. One time, a new math teacher, fresh out of college, still full of idealism, caught Tyler throwing a half-full carton of chocolate milk at Jamal. She gave him detention. The next day, she was reassigned to another class. Rumor had it, Tyler's dad made a call. Jamal didn't see her again. The school wasn't broken, it was working exactly as designed. It was polite in public and silent in private. When Jamal showed up with food stains or a busted lip, teachers looked away. Boys will be boys. Don't stir the pot. We'll look into it. But they never did. The guidance counselor asked him once if everything was okay. Jamal nodded. That was the end of that. No cameras in the bathroom. No proof. No problem. Home was different. Darius Johnson, Jamal's father, had built a quiet life after a loud past. He worked nights as a long-haul trucker, slept during the day, cooked dinner when he could, didn't talk much. But Jamal knew his dad loved him, even if the words didn't come easy. Darius had a certain presence. Even in silence, he took up space. Not loud, not angry, just contained, like a storm inside a box. He never lectured Jamal about toughness, never told him to man up, but his energy said enough. He came from a world where weakness got you killed, literally. South Central in the 90s wasn't a setting, it was a survival test. Darius didn't just survive it. He walked out on top. There were photos in an old shoebox under Darius's bed. Gold chains, pit bulls, men with tattoos and dead eyes. Jamal had found it once when he was 8. His dad never said a word, just took the box, set it back in the closet, and closed the door without looking at him. Jamal never asked, but he always wondered. He knew his dad could be dangerous if he had to, but he also knew his dad chose not to be. That meant something. Jamal never told him about the bullying. He didn't want to disappoint him. Or, worse, awaken something he couldn't control. Still, Darius noticed the silences, the lost appetite, the longer showers, the way Jamal winced when someone touched his shoulder. He didn't ask, but he knew, and Jamal could feel that. Everything changed the day Jamal came home with a cracked phone, a busted lip, and one less shoe. It had started like any other day. Tyler tripped him in the hallway, called him a name loud enough for everyone to hear. Jamal didn't flinch, didn't look back. But in the locker room after gym, Tyler crossed the line, pinned Jamal against the tile wall, ripped the laces off one of his sneakers, and said, "You don't need this. You ain't going nowhere anyway." The crew laughed. One of them filmed it. Jamal didn't fight back. He just stood there, shaking. He limped home with one shoe and a mouth full of copper. Darius didn't ask what happened, didn't touch the bruise, didn't raise his voice. He just looked his son in the eye and gave one slow, solid nod. That night, Jamal couldn't sleep. Something in his father's silence felt heavy, like the calm before something broke. He lay in bed, listening to the house creak, listening to the wind outside. He didn't know what would happen next, but deep down, for the first time, he didn't feel small. He felt seen. The next morning, Jamal woke up before the alarm. His body ached, not from the bruises, but from the weight of something coming. He moved through the house, quietly brushing his teeth, packing his bag, zipping up his hoodie like armor. His dad wasn't in the kitchen, wasn't on the porch, just gone, or maybe already ahead of him. Jamal didn't think too hard about it. He walked to school the same way he always did, same cracked sidewalk, same trees that never lost their leaves. But something in his chest had shifted. Not courage, not fear, just a strange stillness, like the moment before a thunderclap. By the time he reached the school, Tyler was already leaning against the lockers near the front entrance, surrounded by his crew. Jamal kept his head down, walked past them. Tyler didn't say anything. That alone was weird, but it didn't last. By lunch, the storm hit. In the cafeteria, Jamal was carrying his tray when someone kicked the back of his knee. He stumbled, caught himself, and looked back. Tyler was smirking. "What's up, KFC? Still only got one shoe." Laughter. Jamal stood still. Just stood there. Not blinking. Not flinching. Something in his eyes made Tyler pause for half a second. Then Tyler grabbed a handful of mashed potatoes from his own tray and smashed them into Jamal's chest. The room went quiet. White shirt, brown stains, metal tray clanging against the tile floor. Everyone saw it. Some turned away. Some stared. No one moved. Jamal's lip trembled, but he didn't cry. He just looked at Tyler for a long second, then walked out of the cafeteria, potatoes dripping down his sleeve. He didn't go to the office, didn't go home, just sat behind the gym, breathing slowly, trying not to throw up. That night, Darius said nothing again, but he didn't sleep. He sat at the kitchen table until dawn, staring at the wall like it owed him something. Every so often, he'd tap his fingers on the wood. A slow rhythm. Boom, boom, pause, boom. The kind of rhythm you pick up from years in a car with bad brakes or on a block where sirens were part of the soundtrack. The next morning, Jamal walked to school like always. Alone, head down. But this time he noticed something. At the corner before the school gates, a black Cadillac Escalade was parked under a sycamore tree. Windows tinted. Engine off. He didn't look long. He just kept walking. Inside the school, the air felt thicker. Tyler was already in his zone, swaggering through the hall like he ran it. Jamal tried to avoid him, ducking into class early. But second period, it happened again. In the middle of class, Tyler crumpled a note and threw it across the room. It bounced off the back of Jamal's head. He opened it. It said, "Call me when your daddy teaches you how to be a man." Everyone laughed. Even the teacher chuckled. That was the moment something in Jamal cracked. Not broke, cracked, like a door slightly open, just enough for light to slip in. After school, Jamal walked out expecting the usual, backpack zipped, hoodie up, invisible. But something was different. The Escalade was now parked directly across the street from the school entrance. And Darius was leaning against it. White shirt, sleeves rolled, vest open, no chain, no smile. Students walking out slowed down, whispered, moved around him like water around a rock. Tyler came out last, holding a football. He laughed about something with his friends, until he looked up. Darius didn't move, just stared. Tyler stopped laughing. For the first time since freshman year, Jamal watched Tyler hesitate. That moment, just a flicker of fear in Tyler's eyes, planted something deep in Jamal. Not revenge, not pride, just recognition. He's not untouchable. But that wasn't the end. Later that evening, Jamal sat at the kitchen table while his dad stirred a pot of chili. No music, no talking, just the sound of the wooden spoon scraping the sides. Jamal finally spoke. "You were there, weren't you?" Darius didn't turn around. "Where?" "You know where." Darius let the silence stretch, then said, "Did he touch you again?" Jamal nodded slowly. Darius sighed, deep, long, then set the spoon down. "All right." That was it. No lecture. No dramatics. Just, all right. The next morning, Jamal didn't walk to school. Darius handed him a ride. They didn't talk, just drove. Jamal didn't know where they were going until the freeway signs changed. The further they went, the more the landscape shifted. Strip malls, liquor stores, iron gates on every window. The air felt heavier, like it carried more history. South Central. Darius pulled into a parking lot outside an old barbershop, one Jamal had only seen in faded photos. He parked, got out, walked to the passenger side, opened the door. Jamal stayed in the car. "You bringing me here to fight?" he asked, half joking. Darius shook his head. "You need to see something." They walked down the block. People nodded at Darius, quick, respectful. Like seeing a ghost they weren't sure was friendly. They stopped at a corner where a group of men were posted up. Big guys, face tats, sleeveless, silence. Darius turned to Jamal. "You know what would have happened if I was still who I used to be?" Jamal didn't answer. "I'd have had that boy kneeling in the street, crying. I'd have made it. So, he never walked without fear again." He paused. "But that ain't what this is." He pointed to the men behind them. "They're not the enemy. And neither is that boy. The enemy is thinking that your pain don't matter. That you don't get to stand up, that you're supposed to take it." He looked Jamal dead in the eye. "Not my son. Never my son." They drove home in silence. But something had shifted again. Not just in Jamal, but in the air around him. The next day at school, Tyler didn't say a word. He passed Jamal in the hallway, eyes low. At lunch, Jamal sat alone. But this time, no one threw anything. No one laughed. And then it happened. Third period, an announcement came over the loudspeaker. "Tyler Maddox, please report to the office." Immediately. A few heads turned. Jamal didn't. He just stared at his desk, breathing slow, steady. Later that afternoon, word spread. Tyler's father had pulled him out of school. No reason given. No farewell. Just gone. Some said he transferred. Some said he was homeschooled now. Some said he was sent to private rehab for anger issues. No one said bully, and no one mentioned Jamal's name. But everyone knew. Jamal didn't expect peace. Not really. He knew how schools worked, how people moved on from cruelty like it was a season. One day you're the joke. The next, they're laughing at someone else. But something about the silence in the halls now felt different. Uneasy, like everyone was waiting to see who would step up in Tyler's place. And they tried. 2 days after Tyler disappeared, one of his old crew, Marcus, caught Jamal alone by the vending machine. Said something slick about Daddy's little gangster. Smirked. Jamal didn't move, didn't blink, just stared at him. Something in his stare made Marcus back off. No words, no threats, just stillness, the kind that doesn't ask for respect, it takes it. But it didn't stop others from watching. The principal called Jamal in, asked if he wanted to talk about anything. The counselor sent him passes 3 times in 1 week. Teachers suddenly learned his name, started calling on him more, looking nervous when he didn't respond. They weren't worried about Jamal. They were worried about his father. And Jamal knew it. At home, things were the same. Almost. His dad didn't ask about school. He just cooked more, stayed home longer, checked the locks at night. Small things. Sometimes Jamal would catch him standing at the kitchen window, watching the street like he used to watch rearview mirrors. He was still trying to live clean. But Jamal could feel how close that line was, the one his father refused to cross again. A week passed. Then came the substitute, Mr. Denton, fresh out of college, skinny tie, wide smile, tried to be cool with the students. Failed miserably. Jamal didn't think much of him until Denton made a joke in class about how some kids get special treatment just for being scary. He didn't name names. He didn't need to. The class chuckled. Jamal looked up. Denton looked away. That night, Jamal sat at the dinner table with his dad. He's not the problem, Jamal said. They all are. Darius didn't reply at first, just chewed slowly, watching his son. You want me to do something? He asked. Jamal shook his head. No, I think I do. The next day, Jamal asked to speak at the school board meeting. It stunned the office staff. The counselor asked if he was sure. The principal called his father. Darius said just one thing. If he says he's ready, he's ready. The auditorium wasn't full, but the front row was. Board members in blazers, a few teachers, parents sipping Starbucks, and Jamal in his one clean dress shirt, sitting alone, waiting for his name to be called. When it was, he walked up to the mic, hands steady. I was bullied for months at this school, he said, and nobody did anything. No gasps, just silence. Every day, someone laughed at me, called me things, hit me, filmed it. His voice didn't shake. You knew. Maybe not with proof, but you knew, and you did nothing. Now people started shifting. A cough, a tap of a pen. My dad didn't threaten anybody. He didn't hurt anyone. He just showed up, and suddenly you saw me. Not as a problem, not as a joke, as a person. He let that sit. I shouldn't need fear to get treated like I matter. He stepped back, walked off, didn't look at anyone, but when he stepped outside, his dad was waiting by the truck. Said nothing, just put a hand on his son's shoulder. Jamal didn't need words. The tension didn't end there. Online, the video of Jamal's speech leaked. Someone in the audience recorded it. By the next week, it had 100,000 views. Comments flooded in, some supportive, some hateful. The school tried to pretend it hadn't happened, but things started shifting. Quietly, the guidance office put up new anti-bullying posters. The principal made an announcement about respect and safety. Tyler's crew scattered. One moved schools. One joined the wrestling team. One suddenly found religion. Jamal didn't care what they did. He wasn't trying to fix them. He was trying to survive, but survival came with its own weight. Jamal started having dreams. He was back in the bathroom, pinned to the wall, but this time no one came. Not his dad. Not anyone. Just him, alone, staring at himself in the mirror. He'd wake up sweating, fists clenched. One night, he punched a hole in the wall. His dad didn't yell, didn't ask questions, just handed him a patch kit and said, "Fix it right." Jamal did. Weeks passed. Then one day, a knock on the door. It was the substitute, Mr. Denton, looking nervous, holding a folder. Darius opened the door. You lost? Denton swallowed. I came to apologize to Jamal. Darius stared at him for a long second, then stepped aside. Jamal came out of his room confused. Denton didn't make a speech, just said, I was wrong. I saw what was happening. I laughed. I thought it was harmless. I'm sorry. Jamal nodded. I'm not here for your forgiveness, Denton said. Just your truth. Then he left. That night, Jamal wrote something down for the first time. Not for school. Not for grade. Just a journal entry. It began, I'm still here. Things didn't get better right away. They just got quiet, which for Jamal was almost worse. The loudness, the slurs, the food thrown in his face, the laughter in the bathrooms, those were obvious enemies. You could name them, point at them, defend against them. But now, it was like standing in a fog. No attacks, no threats, just distance. Polite silence in the hallways. Quick glances. People pretending not to see him. Teachers who praised him too quickly, too publicly, like they were scared of doing too little again. Jamal didn't want pity. He wanted normal. But normal wasn't coming back. He'd made noise. Real noise. And noise changed things. It also cost you. He started getting messages online. From people in the district, other students, even younger kids. Thank you for saying something. My brother goes to your school. What you did meant a lot. But then came the other kind. You think you're a hero? Your daddy's scare. Everyone and now you're king? Pathetic. We'll be waiting. Jamal stopped opening his DMs. The worst came on a Tuesday afternoon. He was walking home, headphones in, backpack heavy, when he noticed a black truck following a little too close. Windows tinted. No plates. He kept walking. At the next block, the truck pulled over. 3 guys jumped out, older, maybe late teens or early 20s. He didn't know them. You Jamal Johnson? He didn't answer. They stepped closer. You think you're some kind of revolution? One shoved him hard. Jamal stumbled back, but didn't fall. The second, one moved to his side. Before anything else could happen, a loud clap echoed down the street. Darius's truck screeched to a halt. Door swung open. He didn't run. He walked. Calm. Steady. The guys saw him and froze. No words. Just that walk. The 3 of them looked at each other, backed up, and bolted into the truck. It sped off. Darius stood in front of Jamal, looked him over. No bruises, just fear. You good? Jamal nodded, fists trembling. Darius didn't say a word. Just stood there with him until the tremble stopped. Then drove him home in silence. That night, Jamal locked himself in the bathroom and stared at the mirror. He didn't cry. He didn't punch. He just stood there and whispered, I don't want to be afraid anymore. The next morning, he woke up before dawn, sat at the table with a notepad. He didn't write about pain. He wrote about the system, the patterns, the silence. He wrote names, not of bullies, but of teachers who turned away, counselors who checked boxes, principals who didn't know. It was more than a journal. It was a report. At school, he brought it to the vice principal. She flipped through it, quiet, then looked at him. This is serious, Jamal. He nodded. I know. She sighed. You understand, if this goes up to the district, then it's the truth. By that evening, the report was in the superintendent's hands, and the fire had started. Some teachers were furious, called it a witch hunt. Some staff quit preemptively. Others started showing Jamal respect. Real respect. Eye contact. Accountability. One even pulled him aside and said, I should have said something last year. I didn't. I'm sorry. But not everyone was happy. That weekend, the Johnsons' trash bins were knocked over. Snitch was spray-painted on their driveway in red. Darius painted over it the next morning. Didn't say a word. Just painted. Rolled white over hate until it disappeared. Jamal stood beside him, holding the extra bucket. They didn't talk about fear. They erased it. Back at school, Jamal found himself in unfamiliar territory. People started sitting near him at lunch. Not close, not yet friends, but near. A few kids reached out. Quiet ones. Ones who had spent years blending in. One girl said, "What you did made me think maybe I don't have to eat in the library anymore." Another guy handed him a folded piece of paper. "They called my sister a slur. Every day. I didn't know what to do." Jamal took the note and said, "Now you do." But the moment that broke him came in gym class. He was running laps when Coach Bradshaw called him over. Coach was old school. Always looked annoyed. Never smiled. He pulled Jamal aside, voice low. "You know, I used to watch that Tyler kid mess with you, right?" Jamal blinked. "I didn't do anything. Thought it'd blow over. That's on me." Jamal said nothing. Coach nodded to himself. "Anyway, just wanted to say, I was wrong." That hit different. Not because it was dramatic. Because it wasn't. Just a man owning his cowardice. That night, Jamal sat with his dad on the porch. No music. No TV. Just crickets and streetlights. "You think I did the right thing?" Jamal asked. Darius lit a cigarette. Took a slow drag. "You think you did?" Jamal nodded. "Then yeah, you did." Jamal didn't become a hero. He didn't want to be. But in that silence, in the days where people looked at him differently, where fear turned into space, he found something he didn't expect. He had power. And not the kind you inherit. The kind you earn by standing when it's easier to fall. A week passed. No attacks. No warnings. Just a strange calm. But Jamal had learned not to trust quiet. Not in that school. Not in that town. He walked the halls differently now. Not scared. Not angry. Just awake. Watching. He saw the eyes. Some filled with guilt. Others with envy. A few with pride. The way some teachers overcompensated. "Good job, Jamal," for answering a single question. The way a few classmates sat close to him during lunch but didn't say a word. Still testing the water. Waiting to see what he'd do next. But Jamal wasn't waiting. He had a plan. It started with a girl named Alina. Soft-spoken. Pakistani-American. Smart. Always in the front row, but never raised her hand. She caught up with him in the hallway. "My brother got expelled last year," she said. Jamal stopped. "For what?" Fighting back, she handed him a thumb drive. "What's this?" "Security footage. No one was supposed to have it. My cousin worked in the IT department. He saved it." Jamal didn't ask how. He just nodded. That night, he plugged it into his laptop. Watched a fight unfold in grainy hallway video. Alina's brother didn't start it. He ended it, sure, but he didn't start it. And nobody cared. He was brown. The other kid was white. Case closed. The next morning, Jamal walked into the office with the footage. He didn't say much. Just dropped the drive on the desk. "More truth," he said. The receptionist stared. Called for the vice principal. By third period, the district had it. By Friday, Alina's brother was reinstated. Too late for prom. Too late for graduation. But not too late for the record to be cleared. Alina found Jamal after school, eyes glassy. "Thank you." He shrugged. "No," she said. "You don't get to shrug. You did that. No one else." Word spread. The quiet ones started talking. Kids from immigrant families. Kids on free lunch. Kids who got randomly searched in the hallway twice as often. One by one, stories came forward. Names. Incidents. Patterns. Jamal became more than a kid who stood up. He became the one they trusted. But it wasn't just students. It was a janitor who handed him a folder one morning. Quietly. No name. No explanation. Inside, documents. Suspension records. Teacher complaints. Dozens of them, all disproportionately targeting black and brown students. Jamal brought them to the district office. The secretary didn't even blink. Just said, "They've been waiting for you." That's when it clicked. He wasn't the only one. There were others. Adults. Faculty. Parents. All watching, all afraid, all waiting for someone to take the first swing. And now, the swing had been taken. The superintendent called a meeting. Open forum, they said, to listen to the students. They didn't expect half the school to show up. They definitely didn't expect Jamal to stand at the mic again. He didn't yell, didn't accuse, just read. One line at a time. One name at a time. One truth at a time. Teachers who let it happen. Students who were punished for fighting back. The imbalance. The favoritism. The silence. You thought we didn't notice, he said. We noticed everything. The room was dead silent. Then someone clapped. Then another. Then the whole room stood. Outside the auditorium, a man in a dark coat waited for him. Older. Glasses. White beard. You don't know me, the man said, but I know your father. Jamal froze. From where? Before he was your father. A pause. He used to run South Central like a chessboard. Clean, quiet, never unnecessary, but always in control. Jamal blinked. You're not him, the man said, but you've got the same eyes. And then he walked away. At home, Jamal told his father everything. About the files, the meeting, the man. Darius listened, quiet as always, then smiled just barely. You're not me, he said, and that's the point. The next day, the principal stepped down. The vice principal was fired. A new code of conduct was announced, written by a committee of students, Jamal included. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't fast, but it was real, and it was his. One morning, Jamal found a note taped to his locker. For words. They heard you now. No name. No signature. He folded it and tucked it into his wallet. Didn't need to know who wrote it. He already knew. The revelation wasn't one moment. It was 1,000 tiny truths, brought into the light, and finally seen. They didn't go down without a fight. The system, the people who kept it running, who profited from its silence, didn't roll over just because a few truths came out. They retaliated, quietly, professionally, surgically. It started with whispers. Teachers who'd once smiled at Jamal stopped making eye contact. A few students distanced themselves, scared of being seen too. Someone spray-painted "liar" across the back of his locker. A teacher who supported him suddenly found herself reassigned to a different school across the district. No explanation. And then came the article. A local blog, run by a parent with connections, published a piece titled, "The Dangerous Influence of One Student's Grudge." It didn't name Jamal directly. It didn't have to. It used words like divisive, overly aggressive, intimidating family background. They called his father a former gang affiliate. They called Jamal entitled. And worst of all, they called the movement a witch hunt against tradition. The comments exploded. People who had never met him said things like, "He's weaponizing his father's reputation." Another angry black kid blaming everyone but himself. "He's tearing the school apart." It didn't matter that he had proof. Names, documents, videos. They weren't after truth. They wanted to break momentum. Jamal didn't flinch. Not publicly, but at home, he crumbled. He stopped eating for 2 days. Stayed in bed. Screen off. Room dark. His father didn't force him to talk. Didn't give a speech. Just came in one morning, sat at the edge of the bed, and placed something beside him. It was the old shoebox, the one with the faded photos. South Central. Gold chains. Pit bulls. Violence and power. Darius didn't say anything. Just left the box and walked out. Jamal opened it. This time he looked longer. Saw the fear in the eyes of the men. The paranoia behind the pride. Saw his father's younger face, hard, cold, and alone. And tucked in the back, behind the photos, a folded sheet of paper. A poem, written in Darius's handwriting. You can win without destroying. You can fight without fists, but you'll still bleed. The next day, Jamal got up, showered, put on a white shirt, and went back to school. That morning, he stood in the hallway where Tyler once cornered him. This time he waited, watched. The stares didn't stop, but he stood tall, until a teacher walked up, Ms. Reynolds, one of the few who never looked away. "You okay?" she asked. "I'm here," he said. "That's enough for now." She nodded. "You changed this place." "Not enough." "Maybe not, but you started it." In English class, they were reading Baldwin. The teacher, a new sub, asked if anyone had thoughts. Jamal raised his hand, said he wasn't just writing about racism. He was writing about rot, about what happens when people lie to themselves long enough they forget what truth sounds like. The room went quiet. Someone muttered, "Damn." Even the sub couldn't hide his surprise. Later that week, the district board released a statement. We acknowledge past missteps and are committed to restorative equity across all schools. It wasn't an apology, but it was the first time they used the word misstep. That mattered. Small words, big weight, and still, there were those who pushed back. Protests from concerned parents. Social media accounts trying to discredit Jamal. A podcast episode titled The Soft Violence of Victimhood. But Jamal wasn't alone anymore. Students spoke up. Teachers, a few brave ones, pushed back. Even former students came forward, saying this was happening long before Jamal said anything. He just gave a name. One day, after school, a girl stopped him in the hallway. 9th grade. Nervous. I used to get followed around the library, she said. By staff. They thought I was stealing. I never was. I never said anything. She paused. But now I think I will. That night, Darius was out late hauling freight. Jamal sat alone at the kitchen table, notebook open. He started writing again. Not just memories. Plans. Steps. Policies. A handbook, maybe a program. Something others could use. Because now he understood something. Speaking up wasn't the end. It was the beginning. Fallout wasn't failure. It was proof the hit landed. The first sign that something had truly changed came from the least expected place, the school janitor. His name was Mr. Harlan. Gray beard, walked with a limp, said barely 5 words a day. One morning, Jamal was at his locker, gathering his books, when Mr. Harlan stopped beside him, mop in hand. He didn't say, "Good job." He didn't say, "Proud of you." He just nodded, once. But that nod carried years of things Jamal didn't know how to describe. Years of watching. Years of biting your tongue. Years of waiting for someone younger to be braver than you ever got to be. That was the first real recognition. It wasn't loud. It was solid. Later that week, the district invited Jamal to speak again, not just to students, but at a citywide education summit. He almost said no. He didn't want applause. He didn't want to be a symbol. But his dad said one thing that stuck. Symbols can scare people, but voices move them. So he went. He stood on that stage under 2 bright lights and looked out at a crowd that didn't know his name a month ago, teachers, school board reps, reporters, parents from different districts. And he told the truth. I'm not here because I'm special. I'm here because I got tired of waiting for someone else to say what we all saw. He talked about silence, about how it creeps in and convinces you it's normal, about what happens when systems break you down by pretending they don't see you. And then he said this. You want to know what it took for them to finally see me? Pain. Public pain. That shouldn't be the price. He didn't cry, but others did. Not because of what he said, but because of how he said it. Not angry, not vengeful, just tired, but still standing. After the summit, things changed again. Emails poured in from other students in other schools. One wrote, "They're not listening to me, but maybe they'll listen to you." Another, "I thought I was the only one. You made me feel less invisible." And from a teacher in Texas, "We played your speech in class. My students stood and clapped. You lit a fuse." Back at school, something small but powerful happened. At the next student council election, Jamal's name appeared on the ballot, not because he ran, but because someone wrote it in. And then someone else. And then dozens. He didn't win. But that wasn't the point. They saw him. They respected him. Not because of fear, but because of integrity. Even the library staff, who once side-eyed him whenever he came in, now waved when he entered. One librarian whispered, "There's a corner we're redesigning, student-led section. You interested?" He was. He suggested a shelf called Stories That Weren't Safe Before. The librarian smiled. Perfect. But the moment that broke something open, that cracked the shell he'd been building around his chest for years, came during parent-teacher conferences. It was supposed to be quick. His father sat beside him, quiet as always. They moved from class to class, polite compliments, general praise. Nothing surprising. Then came Ms. Callahan. English. She paused longer than the rest. "You know," she said, "I should have noticed sooner what you were going through. I didn't. And I need to say that to your face. Jamal didn't know what to say. His dad spoke for the first time that night. Sometimes noticing too late is still better than never. She looked at Darius, nodded, then looked back at Jamal. You're not just brave, you're kind. Don't let the world beat that out of you. He felt something in his throat then. Heavy, thick. He nodded, didn't trust himself to speak. Recognition didn't come in trophies. It came in changes, in tone, in how people looked at him, not through him. One night, as they ate dinner on the porch, Darius said something unexpected. I was scared for you, you know. Jamal looked up. When? Every damn day. Watching you carry this. Thinking I broke the cycle, only to see it come for you anyway. He exhaled slowly. But I ain't scared anymore. A pause. You handled it better than I ever could. Jamal stared down at his plate, said almost too soft to hear, That's because I had you. Darius didn't respond, just reached across the table, gripped his son's hand, held it for a long time. That night, Jamal wrote something new in his notebook. A single line. Truth doesn't need a megaphone. It just needs a place to land. Spring came early that year. The trees bloomed too soon. Pollen everywhere. But it brought warmth, the kind that felt earned. Jamal walked the halls of his school with a different posture now, not because he was fearless, but because he no longer walked alone. It started small. A freshman, nervous, thin, wore his hoodie like armor, stopped Jamal outside the science building. They call me names in gym, he said, not just regular names. Jamal listened, didn't interrupt. When the kid finished, Jamal just nodded. I get it, he said. You want me to tell you how to stop it? The boy shook his head. I just want to know I'm not crazy. Jamal smiled. You're not. He started spending his lunch breaks in room 213, an unused side room near the counselor's office. The janitor gave him the key without asking why. Jamal turned it into something different, something new, a quiet space for kids who didn't have one. No flyers, no posters, just word of mouth. And slowly they came. A girl who stuttered, a trans boy who sat in the back of every class, a senior with a father on parole and no college plan, a Vietnamese kid whose name no teacher could pronounce. They came. Saturday. Ate. Exhaled. No one had to say why they were there. They just were. And Jamal? He sat with them. Not above them. With them. He called it the quiet table. No speeches. No lessons. Just space. Some days they shared stories. Other days they just shared silence. And that was enough. The librarian noticed. She added a shelf near the back wall with a new sign. Books for the loud, the quiet, and the never heard. Jamal helped pick the titles. The Bluest Eye. Persepolis. They called us Enemy. Just Mercy. One day, a girl placed a small note inside a book and left it on the shelf. It read, I didn't drop out because of you. No name. No need. That spring, Jamal's English teacher asked students to write a final paper. Who did you become this year? Most kids wrote about hobbies, grades, sports. Jamal wrote one paragraph. I didn't become anything. I just stopped pretending I was invisible. The teacher didn't write comments. She just circled the sentence and wrote, Keep becoming. At home, Darius watched his son quietly, less worried now, more curious. One night, Jamal asked, Did you ever think you'd see this? Darius shook his head. I didn't think I'd live long enough to. He reached into a drawer, pulled out a thick envelope. Inside were savings bonds, documents, old money, untouched. I've been saving this for something that matters. Jamal looked at him confused. I thought it'd go to college, Darius said, but now I think it should go to whatever you're building. Jamal blinked. You trust me with that? Darius nodded. I trust who you've become. The following month, Jamal filed the paperwork for a student-led nonprofit. It wasn't flashy. No viral videos. No sponsors yet. But it had a name. The Quiet Table Project. Mission. Provide safe peer-run spaces inside schools for students who feel unseen, unheard, and unsafe. Within a month, 3 other schools reached out. By summer, 10. Jamal didn't run it like a hero. He ran it like a student who understood pain. And that made all the difference. At the end of the school year, during the senior send-off assembly, the principal knew, young, trying hard, invited Jamal to the stage. Every year, we recognize one student who redefined what leadership looks like, she said. She handed him a plaque. For courage without ego. For voice without violence. For presence without permission. Jamal didn't make a speech. He just looked at the crowd, then stepped back to his seat. The plaque stayed on his lap the whole time. After the assembly, a teacher approached him, one he barely knew. Years from now, she said, they'll name something after you. He smiled, a little embarrassed. They don't need to. She looked him dead in the eye. No, but they will. That night, Jamal walked alone to the edge of town. The old basketball court cracked and faded. The same one his dad once played on when he was 17 and angry at the world. Jamal sat on the bench, closed his eyes. The air smelled like dust and possibility. He pulled out his notebook, wrote one last thing. Legacy isn't what you leave behind. It's what you create in others while you're still here. He tore the page out, folded it, slipped it into the crack in the court's bench. A secret offering. To anyone who might need it someday. The first time Jamal realized something big was happening, he wasn't even in the room. He was at home, sitting in the kitchen, scrolling through messages on his phone, quiet as usual when his dad handed him a tablet. Turn the volume up, Darius said. It was a live stream. A town hall meeting from a different district, different school, different city. But on the screen was a teacher holding up a printed photo of the quiet table sign from Jamal's school. This right here, the teacher said, voice firm, is what we should have done 10 years ago. The crowd murmured, then clapped. And Jamal? He sat there in stunned silence. His world had just gotten bigger. The Quiet Table project had been quiet by design. No press releases, no press kits, just a downloadable PDF on a simple website with a line at the top. Make space for someone like you. By summer, the download link had been clicked 12,000 times. By fall, 35,000. And then came the emails. From Arkansas, from Chicago, from rural Oregon, from Harlem. Teachers writing, I set one up in the back of my classroom. Students writing, we made a quiet table in the band room. One school sent a photo. An entire wall turned into a mural with the names of every student who had once felt invisible, painted by students who swore they'd never let anyone feel that way again. Jamal didn't take credit. He answered emails late at night, gave feedback on layouts, listened when kids just needed to talk. He didn't become famous. He became useful. And that meant more. His own school changed in ways too small to make headlines, but big enough to matter. A new hiring policy meant more diverse staff, not just racially, but culturally, linguistically, emotionally. They added pronoun stickers to ID cards. Started letting students suggest new clubs without needing staff sponsors. The library doubled its budget for student-requested titles. And on the first week back, they painted a wall near the front office. At the center, a chair. No one sitting in it. Above it, space, silence, strength. And at the bottom, inspired by Jay Johnson, class of 26, Jamal tried to avoid walking past it. Too much. Too real. But one day he stopped, just looked at it, then kept walking. Didn't need to say anything. At home, Darius seemed lighter. Not happier, just freer. One night, over dinner, he said, you broke the pattern, you know. Jamal looked up. I did. Darius nodded. My dad never talked to me, unless it was to yell. His dad didn't talk at all. You? You spoke, and the whole place had to listen. Jamal took a breath. Sometimes I'm still scared. Good. Darius smiled. Means you haven't gotten comfortable. That's where men go soft. It wasn't just the school. The community shifted too. A local reporter reached out, wanting to do a profile. Jamal declined. But the reporter still ran a piece, not about him, but about the movement. The generation that speaks without permission. Within days, a group of parents formed a coalition to lobby for better equity training across the county. A city council member invited Jamal to a roundtable. He went, quiet, reserved, didn't talk much, until he did. And when he spoke, the room listened. But the most surprising ripple came from someone he thought was gone. Tyler. One afternoon, Jamal got a letter in the mail, handwritten, no return address. Inside, "You changed things. I hated you for that, but you did it without breaking me. That takes strength I don't have. I'm working on it. Sorry. T****. No signature. Just a small piece of paper. But it sat heavy in Jamal's hand. He didn't forgive. Not fully. But he understood. And that sometimes was enough. Recognition was one thing. Response was another. But ripple meant you started something bigger than yourself. And Jamal? He saw it now. In the classroom where the girl who once flinched now led a poetry club. In the boy who stopped hiding his lisp and ran for student council. In the kid with burn scars on his arms who now volunteered in the library twice a week. In the teachers who used to look away, now staying after class to ask, "Are you good?" The system was still flawed, still slow, still fighting to keep its shape. But now it had to fight against students like Jamal, and kids like the ones he'd helped, and teachers who remembered what courage looked like. On the last week of school, a freshman asked Jamal what it felt like to win. Jamal smiled. This wasn't about winning, he said. It was about not staying quiet. The days after graduation moved slow. No bells, no routines, no Tyler, no noise, just the weight of free time and a strange kind of stillness Jamal hadn't felt in years. He stayed up late and woke up earlier, walked more, wrote more, sometimes just sat at the window with a notebook in his lap, watching the world breathe. One afternoon, while walking through the neighborhood, he passed by the old middle school, the one where he'd first learned how to go quiet, how to shrink himself to fit inside someone else's expectations. It looked smaller now. He stopped at the gate, just stood there. A teacher stepped out of the building and did a double take. "Wait, you're—" He didn't finish the sentence, just walked up, shook Jamal's hand. "We've heard about what you're doing. If you ever want to come speak to the 8th graders, the door's open." Jamal nodded. "Maybe I will." And for the first time, he didn't feel like he was returning to a place that had failed him. He felt like someone coming back with something to give. Later that week, he got a call from the superintendent. Not his, from another district. "We're building a restorative justice program," she said. "We've studied what you started. Would you consult with us?" He almost laughed. He wasn't even 18 yet. No degree, no credentials. But he said yes. And he took the meeting. Sat at the end of a long conference table, next to people with advanced degrees, polished shoes, and nervous smiles. They asked questions. He answered slowly, carefully. They took notes. He didn't lead with trauma. He led with strategy, with systems, with hope. On the way home, Darius asked, "You feel like you're faking it?" Jamal nodded. "Sometimes. That's called growth. Means you're in rooms you used to think were locked." Another letter came, this time from someone he hadn't thought about in a long time. Coach Bradshaw, the man who once looked away in the locker room. The envelope was short. No return address. "I retired. I think about what I didn't say to you every day. I wish I'd been braver. I see now that your silence was never weakness. It was patience. And I didn't deserve it. But thank you anyway." Jamal folded the letter. Didn't show it to anyone. But he kept it. In late July, Jamal hosted a small event at the public library. No press. No stage. Just folding chairs and a stack of blank notebooks. He handed them out to a dozen kids who showed up, kids who had read about the quiet table online. Kids who had never said much in class. Kids who just wanted to be somewhere that didn't ask them to explain their silence. He started with a question. "What do you wish someone had asked you?" They wrote their answers down. No one had to read them aloud. But a few did, and by the end of the hour, there were tears, and laughter, and something bigger than healing. There was creation. That night, back at home, Jamal sat with his father on the porch again. 2 chairs, one silence. Darius pulled a folded napkin from his pocket. Written in his messy handwriting was a single phrase. The cycle didn't break itself. He handed it to Jamal. "You snapped it." Jamal looked at the paper. Read the words twice. Then said softly, "Maybe now I can help others unlearn theirs. A week later, Jamal visited a nearby school in a district where the walls still smelled like erasure of stories of names of presents. A student handed him a drawing, crayon on printer paper. It was of a table. For chairs. No one sitting. Just shadows, drawn carefully. At the top, in shaky letters. I save a seat. For me. Jamal framed it, put it above his desk, next to the photo of him and his father, taken not at graduation, but a week later when they stood side by side at the mural wall at his old school. Darius never smiled in pictures, but in this one he did. Jamal didn't have all the answers, didn't have a 5-year plan, but he had something better. He had the trust of people who had never been listened to. He had a voice that didn't shout, but didn't shake anymore either. And he had a mission that wasn't tied to revenge, but to restoration. To making sure no other kid had to walk down a hallway, believing silence was the safest choice. One night, as the summer ended, Jamal returned to the cracked court near his old neighborhood, the one where he'd once slipped a note into the bench. He found it still there, weathered, smudged, unreadable. But that was okay, because what mattered wasn't the words. It was that someone had left something behind, and that someone else maybe someday would find it. And no, they weren't the first, and they wouldn't be the last. The world won't remember me for volume, but maybe it will remember the silence I refused to accept, and the space I left for others to speak, to heal, to rise,